Hey there, this is Alex Kluge, and I'm here from Toronto Home Experts. And I'm here to dive into the April 2023 Toronto real estate market update. All right, so before we begin, we're going to be comparing the numbers for April 2023 against April 2022. And the market was going in a very different direction in 2022. April is really kind of the tail end of the peak, and really we started seeing the start of the decline in real estate prices. So, be interesting to dive in to see what the numbers look like this month for April 2023, compare them to last month. So let's dive in. All right, so sales volume is down 5.2%, which actually is better than I thought it was going to be, just judging from what's happening in the marketplace today compared to where we were last April. Now, just for context, like the sales volume for April at 7,500 is actually quite low in historical context. Like this would compare against like a 2002, 2003 sales volume, which is like obviously back then, 20 years ago, the volume wasn't quite what we have come to expect. Like, yes, we've had some peaks and valleys, and last April was the start of a decline. So really, the fact that we're at 7,500 relative to where we were last year, actually, I think that is a very positive indication, because really, what we're seeing in the marketplace is a lack of inventory. So there's not a lot of new product out there. So there is a pretty high absorption rate of those sales. And I'm going to get to actually some of those stats in just a moment. So new listings. So just kind of on that train of thought, like when I said there's a lack of supply, like there really is a lack of supply. Look at like where we're at with new listings, 11,000 new listings. So our previous slide, we had 7,500 sales, give or take, and now we have 11,000, sort of new listings. So that's a pretty high percentage of new listings that are selling. That's actually 66%. So where does that, like, what does that mean? Like, is that like, what does 66% mean? So just for context, so one of the stats that I look at in the market is where are we from a sales to new listings ratio, which is basically what the stat is right here that I'm referring to. So typically, like I would say a good absorption rate, like, healthy absorption rate is probably somewhere around 50% ish, somewhere around there. Like still like, not like red hot market, but, not a declining market. But here we're seeing like 2/3 of all basically units that are on the market are selling. And that puts into context it's the third best ever April on record with that type of absorption rate. So that's pretty healthy. And that's telling me that there's not enough supply and buyers are just really looking to get into the market or willing to absorb basically 2/3 of the supply, which I think is healthy. So like kind of in the context of like where we've been and where we're going and where I think we are right now is, and I'm going to get into prices in a moment, but like really I think that sort of the worst is behind us when we come to where we are in the real estate market. Like yeah, we've seen interest rates come up significantly last year, and really they've plateaued, and the Bank of Canada signaled that this is probably it for rate hikes. So we're probably at kind of what to expect for the next, call it 6 to 12 months with interest rates. So that's putting a little bit of confidence with buyers, knowing that like if they buy today, likely rates are going to be the same, if not maybe a little bit lower in the near future. We don't know yet. There's still a lot to speculate, but good news is, and like inflation seems to be under control. Like the inflation rate has decreased fairly consistently over the last 3 or 4 readings. So that's great news, meaning there's less pressure on Bank of Canada to raise rates. So anyways, this all is kind of showing that maybe we sort of hit the bottom maybe last fall with prices, and sort of seeing that positive momentum shift in the marketplace. And certainly we're seeing that, because when it comes to like we're going to talk about active listings, like there's not a lot of active listings on the market relative to sales, right? Like that we just talked about. And so one thing that's very commonplace now again is multiple offers. And that's happening now with a cross section of types of properties, whether that's like, detached freehold, semi, even townhouse and condos are seeing multiple offers. So it's becoming more commonplace. Again, it depends on location, depending on, the type of property it is, but we are seeing a fair number of multiple offers now in the market, and that's seemingly increasing in frequency relative to where we were even in like January, February. Okay, so prices. So let's average price. Everyone wants to know what's going on with prices. That's really the number one question. And like what we just talked about kind of like tease up a little bit what we talked about. So, last year to this year, last April, we're only down 7.8%, which is actually quite surprising. Um, in the sense of where we were last April, with a kind of like the market starting to change and a turn in sentiment. We're only down 7.8%, and a big part of that is actually where we've come from. Really the low of the low in terms of average prices for GTA real estate was in December. So we've seen like a steady increase in price since then. And actually, for month over month, from March to April, we saw an average price increase of 4%, which is like, that's a big number. That's a very, very big number. And not entirely surprising based on like what I'm seeing in the market, like just, acting on behalf of buyers and sellers. Like I can see that prices are increasing, and that's, a function of lack of supply. Confidence seems to be back there with buyers. Like, listen, I'm not saying that, we're back in like a bull market for real estate. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is like, we're seeing the worst is behind us. We're seeing gradual increases, but like 4% increase is a pretty significant increase month over month. Like, we don't see that very, very often. Like, just in context of like average prices, like typically from um, April to May, which is going to be next month's video, there is almost always an increase in price. There's only been 2 years in the last 21 years where there's not been an increase. And that was last year, not ironically, but like unsurprisingly, because of the, as I was just saying, the change in market. But in 2020, which was, we were locked in lockdown mode at that point, and prices were falling pretty dramatically. So, anyways, that's going to show that I think this 4% increase month over month, we're going to see, maybe not 4% next month, another increase, but I'm feeling fairly confident that we're going to see continued price increases throughout this spring. So look out for our next videos for the May and June videos. But that's really based on what we're seeing. Working with being active in the marketplace with both buyers and sellers, we are seeing prices increase. So that's going to have an effect on sentiment and obviously where we go this fall as well. Okay, so average home price. So like here, kind of what I'm talking about, this graph you can see on my right. Really the bottom was in December, and like it's been a gradual increase, but the last month was a little bit more of a significant increase. Now we're basically on par from where we were of June last year. So, I said in I can't remember the last video, maybe 2 videos ago, that I thought by, end of May, June, we would basically be, kind of above those levels. And I still think that's going to be the case, because if you look at where the graph is, like we have a long way to go before we ever get back to February prices of last year. And I'm not suggesting that's going to happen anytime soon, but I do see us having, stable price increases, and maybe not over the summer months, because typically summer months are, typically flatline or maybe a slight decline. But I do think we're going to see continued price increases this spring, and that'll set up nicely for what is to come in the fall. All right, so average home price by district. So this is kind of an interesting one. So here we're looking at like average prices, for 2022 to 2023, like Toronto, York region, Halton. Like interesting, like some markets like Halton, York region is like, hasn't seen a really big dip from last year to this year, which, they've seen some very strong appreciation, basically in the last sort of 5 months or so. But most interesting is actually Toronto last month was the largest appreciating district within the GTA. We actually saw a price increase of 6.2%. So that was leading the way. And actually, Peel was in second with a 4% increase. So, anyways, great news that we're seeing kind of across the board, not just Toronto, performing well when it comes to prices across the board. Anyway, so thank you so much for tuning into this month's video. We're very excited to answer questions that you may have. But if you're a buyer or a seller in this market, we're happy to sit down with you and talk to you a little bit more about what these numbers means for you as a buyer or seller. And as always, subscribe, sign up for updates, and we will look forward to seeing you next month. Thanks again. Bye for now.